Welcome to r/entitled people, where we share stories from your lives about people who think the rules don't apply to them, and they should get what they want. Thank you, friends, for subscribing to the channel, and for so many likes. And today, we have 3 great stories. So, subscribe, hit the like button, and let's begin. The first story. The inept security guard allowed the intruder to run rampant, leading to chaos and potential danger. He was fired. The second story. IT nightmare. Fired employee faces legal threats from inept manager in HR. Exposes company's desperate attempt to cover their failures. The third story. Duo resignation. Domino effect as dissatisfied employees take a stand against toxic workplace culture. The first story is, I hate having Kevins as security. I'm the adult supervisor in a hotel in the downtown area in a major city. While we are a business hotel, we're located near a lot of bars and clubs, so we get a lot of chaos at night, especially on weekends. So we have a hired security that comes on property 5 nights a week and stays the full night. Because of how crazy our property can get, our exterior doors are set to auto so that people can go in and out freely. They all lead into a vestibule that has a second set of doors that are set to one way, meaning that they can only go from the inside of the building out. Someone on the outside of these doors must use their key card or hit the buzzer to speak with a desk agent. We have it this way so that desk agents control who comes in and out, and security can watch the doors and walk the perimeter so they can see in the blind spots of the cameras. An hour or so after our bar closed for the night and the part-time bartender went home, our full-time bartender stopped in with some friends. She said they were out for the night and felt like ordering a pizza and popping in to say hi. I said sure, and they parked themselves off to the side. When I buzzed the pizza guy in through the south entrance, a crowd of guests came in the north entrance and some guy followed in behind them and went straight for our market area. He started digging through stuff and grabbed some chips and came to me saying to charge them to his room. I asked for the room number and he told me 43 or maybe 47. What? Sir, what's your last name? He gives me his last name and it doesn't come up in my system. I try a few different spelling variations and nothing. I even went so far as to search the first initial P, and there were only 3 names that popped up in-house, and not a single one was close to his. Sir, if you can't give me room number and last name, I need to take cash or a card. He tried to argue to just put it to the room, and I stood my ground. Cash or card. He started going through his pockets and pulls out a stack of cards, but doesn't bother going through them. He keeps muttering that his sister has all his money and he doesn't have cash. I told him I could take credit or debit, and he hands me 2 Visa gift cards. Both decline. He then digs through his pockets again until a couple comes to the doors. They buzz me. I ask for a room number / last name, and they confirm they're guests. I let them in and they come to get new keys. The man tries to step out of the way so that I can take care of the guests. I tell him that I have to ring him up first. He tells me to take care of the guests. We go back and forth with this for a moment before the guest just offers to pay for their chips. I begrudgingly take the card from the guest and start to close out the transaction. Remember how I let the pizza guy in? Well, he actually dropped off 2 orders. One for my bartender and one for a guest who hadn't come down yet. This is common, and the delivery guys know to just leave it at the desk with me. Most people won't touch it, or will ask if it's theirs before they do. The chips guy didn't. He just started lifting the lid to look at the food. I snapped and told him to stop and to get out. He tried to argue that he was checking to see if the pizza was his. I told him I knew the order wasn't his, that he isn't a guest here, and that he needs to leave now. He tried to argue more with me, but I just kept telling him to get out until he finally did. The guest apologized to me for getting involved, and I told them to not worry. I wasn't going to charge them for the chips, and for them having to be caught up in that situation, I let them take 2 waters for free from the market. They again apologized to me and asked if this was a regular thing. I took a deep breath and smiled. Unfortunately, it is downtown, and a Friday night. The guests seemed to understand but still felt bad. I sighed and nodded over their shoulder while whispering, I'm honestly more upset that my security is still on TikTok. The guests look over and, you guessed it, my security officer is sitting there, not even 6 feet from us, eyeballs in his phone. He not once looked up to see what was going on with the chips guy. The guests walked off to the elevators, and as soon as I saw them step on and I made sure no one else was around, I got his attention. Kevin! Kevin! He slowly looked away from his phone with a half smile, half laugh on his face. I threw my arms up and just stared him down. Dude, what the F? He was so confused, and I just unloaded on him with everything he just missed out on. He was so shocked that he shot up, threw his phone in a drawer behind the desk, and profusely apologized to me for being distracted. My bartender sat further away than Kevin did, and she and her friends heard and saw everything. How the hell did he not? He started rambling about how he'll do better, and I just watched cameras to see if Chip Guy actually left. Nope. I spotted something moving just on the edge of the camera view on the north vestibule. I glance up and I see him standing there. He never actually left. He walked on the other side of the one-way door and hid off camera. I pointed him out and told Kevin to make him leave. Do not let him in. Kevin walked right up to the doors to where they would open, stood in the open doorway and told this guy to leave. Chip Guy got in his face and started berating him, saying he was a guest and an officer and didn't deserve to be treated this way. Kevin was startled, backed up and let the guy in the building. Kevin looked at me confused and I shot him an angry look and shook my head. Kevin then puffed up and got back in the guy's face demanding ID. Chip Guy said he didn't have to and that he wanted his pizza. That's when I started shouting for him to get out again. Kevin then cut me off and told me to call the police. I knew nothing else was going to be done, so I did. While I'm on the phone with 911, Kevin is still keeping the guy from going any further in the lobby. I'm shaking from anger, anxiety, and stress at this point, and I'm skipping over my own words, so 911 is having to ask me to repeat myself over and over. I eventually give a description of the guy and our address, and as soon as I'm off the phone with 911, Chip Guy decides to finally leave on his own. While we're waiting on the police to arrive, someone inside the club right across the street somehow snuck a weapons into the building. Police were obviously more focused on that than our chip thief, so they never came. I told Kevin to get the pizza to the guest room, and then start doing a perimeter check to be sure that the Chip Guy was actually gone this time. I watched cameras and made sure he actually left the building this time. I kept my eyes on the cameras until I got a phone call. It was the pizza delivery guy. Turns out the pizza that Chip Guy tried to steal was meant for another hotel with the same name. He was calling to tell us whoever wanted the pizza could just have it. While I'm trying not to scream out loud, I catch on camera, you guessed it, Chip Guy. He somehow snuck around the property under and off camera, and into the south vestibule and waited, again off camera, until a crowd of people came in. He tried to hide behind them until he was at the market. I immediately put down the phone and shouted at him to get out again. He walked in, grabbed chips, rolled his eyes at me and said, "What are you gonna do about it? You already called the cops, tell them I took SH while you're at it." Then strolled out. Where was Kevin? He had just started his perimeter check and caught Chip Guy as he was walking out of the building. Kevin just stood there yelling at him to not come back. Chip Guy just kept walking and flipped Kevin off. Kevin tried to come in and write up an incident report. He didn't know how to fill one out and didn't know what to put. I had already been writing one as the events occurred, with timestamps and camera numbers, and just copy and pasted what I had typed and told Kevin I could email it to him and he could edit it to be from his perspective with his information. He said no, and for me to just print it out. I did, and he just crossed out his name in parts and wrote mine instead. So where mine said that I then watched cameras while Kevin did a perimeter check, it said that Kevin sat at the desk with the cameras while I did the perimeter check. He then signed it. For the next 3 hours, Kevin refused to leave the front desk. He went into our back office, grabbed a chair, and sat down right beside me and watched cameras, buzzed people in, and was directly in my way when I was trying to do the audit. Multiple times I had to tell him to get up and go take care of people hiding in the vestibules, because instead of him actually watching the cameras, he was back on his phone, or was talking to me about whatever popped in his head. I remained silent until I finished the audit, and then took a long trip to the ladies' room, then took even longer making the coffee for the lobby. I just needed to be away from him for a while. My head was splitting open from the stress headache. I come back to the desk and realize he has 15 minutes left of his shift. He looks up at me with puppy eyes, and before he even asks, I just groan and tell him he can go. 15 minutes isn't 2 hours, and at this point, he's proven he's utterly useless anyway. He then tells me he's excited to work with me again tonight. I'm so considering calling out. Update. I was too stressed and irritated to bother typing in a complaint to my bosses about Kevin, and decided to give him one more night. Big mistake. There was another incident. While not as bad as Chip Guy, I did come close to losing my temper. I flat out told Kevin to leave property, do not come back, and that I was reporting him to his managers and mine. I did just that, and my email was actually forwarded to the CEO of the security company. The CEO heavily apologized to us, and my manager may have hinted that we may be searching for other companies to contract with. The second story is, this was from a while ago, but I thought I'd share my story about a random IT gig gone stupid, and HR's legal threats. Had this whole massive 200 pages of documentation I had written the first 2 weeks or so. All the objectives, everything we worked on, purchased, etc. It was meticulous, but not a requirement for the contract. I wrote it in my own time after each day to make sure I knew this system inside and out, because I figured they would fire the DipSH manager and keep me on as lead. So I wrote and kept for personal use. At some point, I told my manager about it, and he said it was useless, and that I had better not be wasting work hours on something full of useless info. Told him I wasn't, and he said then it's fine I keep it for myself if I wanted to waste my own time. Project manager apparently went over budget 2 months into a 6-month project. I had no idea until he fired me. Apparently so he could use the funds intended for my pay to keep the project going. Like 2 days later, HR called me. I honestly was expecting them to report that they had fired him and wanted to rehire me. Apparently he had told them how ineffectual I was for the project. As far as I could tell, no one else was actually doing anything besides me. But you know, that's just like my perspective, man. Anyways, they wanted the documentation I wrote that the project manager deemed useless. The project came to a screeching halt, and the manager couldn't figure out a USB port from his own a-hole. I told them no, and you fired me without warning, so this just isn't gonna happen. Eventually, the HR woman actually yelled and threatened to ruin your effing life, and was going to have their legal team sue me for breach of contract. Hung up on her repeatedly. Told them I would sell it to them for the remainder of my contract pay. Of course, they said no. Finally, they gave up trying to contact me via cell, email, etc. About 2 weeks later, FedEx had me sign for a parcel as proof I received it. Inside was a pre-written affidavit by the company's legal team, admitting the failure of the project was due to me stealing company property as retaliation for being fired. They claimed they would not pursue legal action against me if I signed the affidavit and gave over the documentation. They even claimed it would be a felony, so they're really helping me out with their mercy here. What a piece of work this whole company is. Anyways, showed a lawyer, reviewed my work contract with him, and he asked if they had proof of me creating this documentation while on paid work time. Told him absolutely not, and not only that, but I also had the text from the manager saying he didn't want it. Time stamped over a week before they fired me. Shredded the letter and never heard back from them. I still fantasize about their office building somehow being hit by a meteor. Or an RPG round. And the last story is, quit today and a coworker followed me. My job has been treating me terribly recently and tried to give me a written warning for something that happened in December, when I was on leave for a time. I refused to sign the warning and I looked at my boss and HR lady and told them I'm done. I quit. Went and said goodbye to some good coworkers, who later got in trouble because I spoke to them before leaving. Within an hour, another coworker called to let me know that they had quit too. Boss and HR pulled him into meeting about some BS, and he looked at them and said, "I'm done," and left. I have not been able to stop laughing since. We're a very small group of about 9 people. 1 is on leave right now. 2 positions are already open. 2 people are interns who leave next month, and today, 2 quit. Subscribe, click the like button if you want to support the channel. Thank you for watching.